Sup everybody, it's Toby from Toby Wayne Studios. Today I'm going to be showing you how I lay down the modeling colors for this zombie bust that I sculpted. This one's called Bullseye for reasons that you'll see here in a few minutes. You can see that I've already laid down the flesh tones. I didn't want to bore everybody with that because it's pretty simple. You just make sure you cover your piece. I brushed this one on the first skin layers there, the flesh tones, and once I get a good coat coverage on the piece, then I will go back and I will start using my airbrush. Here you see I'm starting with my very light browns. I always work light to dark. No rule that says you can't go dark to light. I've seen other artists do that, and that's great. I just prefer to go light to dark. I will go and make sure that I get good coverage on with my flesh tones, laying those out first, getting up under the chin, behind the ears. That's a real easy one to miss, is behind the ears. Under the hairline is also a troublesome spot. So just make sure you get a good layer of your flesh tone, whichever one you choose. I just did mine right out of the bottle, I think it's Durceram acrylic paints. Just their simple AC flesh tone. Put a good coat on there and then start with my modeling colors. As I said before, I start with a light brown, and here I basically am just laying down the areas that I want to darken. So like under the under the eyes, the gums, the teeth, the tip of the nose up underneath the nose, the ears. Pretty much any recessed area, that's where I'm going to lay down this brown to kind of give me an idea of where do I want to go with these bruising and modeling of the skin. Think of it as a blueprint for bruising. Once I lay those down, then I can kind of get an idea of, all right, well, this is where I really want to focus on making heavy bruising, which is, to me, on a zombie piece is pretty important. I always enjoy the bruising and the mottled skin look. Just a pretty disturbing look for zombies in general. It's interesting, when I first started using my airbrush, I actually hated it. It was one of those things that I didn't feel comfortable with. I wasn't feeling like I was capturing the idea or the essence behind an airbrush. I didn't really know how to, thin out my paints. It just became really frustrating, and so I actually stopped using my airbrush for quite a while. But it was one of those things that once I eventually got the hang of it, I didn't give up on it completely. I went back and tried it again and just kept trying it until I finally got a feel for what it was that I was doing, and then I kind of got the hang of it, and now I actually enjoy it. So when it comes to the modeling, it's just one of those things that you just have to practice, and there you'll see once I've laid down the blueprint of where I want my bruising to go, I will go back and kind of same color. Using the same color. I don't darken it just yet. I'll just actually, because it is such a light brown, I'll go back and I will go back over the areas with that same color, and the more times you apply that same color over that those same patterns, it will get darker. So that's the nice thing, is you don't have to necessarily start darkening your paints until you get into the heavier bruising. So this is great because you can just kind of lay down that first pattern by going over it a couple of times to establish the modeled pattern that you're looking for. One of the things that I should mention about modeling is there really is no right or wrong way to model. Just keep in mind it's all random patterns, random colors. There's a lot of different ways to pull off modeling. Some guys like to do a circular motion, almost like a figure 8 kind of a pattern. Some guys will get in really tight with their brush and focus on little tiny areas and They call it noodling, where you're just kind of wiggling your hand with the airbrush, and it's making these really fine little lines on top of the bigger lines that you've laid down. And I do that, and in some cases I'll do the figure eight. Not so much for the figure eight. When I first started doing modeling, I was trying the figure eight pattern, and I just thought that it was too symmetrical. So what I did was I just kind of started laying down my bruised areas and the patterns, and then I went back in with my noodling real tight in on the piece, and it works a lot better for me that way. Again, there is no right or wrong way. It's just practice, and there's still things that I need to learn. So these are just kind of my techniques on how I paint up a sculpt. There you can see I've actually gone back. I've edited it out, but I've gone in now and I've actually taken my light brown paint and I've added just the touch of black to it to darken it, to separate it. And there's a good shot. You can see the light brown, and now I've gone back and I've darkened it up with my black paint. And this is a shot here of me doing that. I'm adding in just a little bit more black to darken it up that much more. I think the key to modeling is definitely layers and layers of different colors, and that's what's, I think, one of the keys is that's going to really make your modeling job explode on this piece here and really make it stand out, is that those multi-layers. And I'm one of those guys, I like I said earlier, I like to go from light to dark, and I do like that depth of the multi-layers. You can definitely see it on that right eye. I've gone in much darker, and I just like those groups, those heavy group patterns. So here you see is I'm getting a little more tighter with my darker colors, and I've lowered my air compressor PSI to make sure that I don't just shoot out a ton of paint. Very frustrating. Bob Ross would call those little happy accidents, but it it can get really frustrating when you're trying to do a controlled area and then all of a sudden out comes, you know, half of your hopper of paint all over to your sculpt. Very frustrating. So I lower the PSI on this. I think I start out with 40 and I've dropped it down to 20 at this point. And this is, now I'm just going in with that noodling. You can even actually see how close I am to the sculpture itself. Painting these smaller pieces is much more difficult when you get a bigger piece, which eventually one day I'll paint a Sickness Rising sculpt, which is like 12 inches tall. It's much easier to have control over the larger pieces than the smaller ones. But anywho, I've lowered the PSI and I've started going in again over those patterns, just with the tighter noodling and the darker paints, and that's going to really establish that separation of multi-layers of bruising. And there's just something to me about that black color, especially on a zombie, and especially in that pooling of the blood. I don't know, I just really enjoy that. It sounds really weird, but it is what it is, and it has a good look. Airbrush maintenance is very important. Some of the stuff has been edited out, but a lot of the times I'm cleaning in between different layers of colors, clean it out to make sure that there's no, because acrylics do have a tendency to want to clog, which also can get very frustrating, especially when you're trying to do these little detailed areas and then the paint's clogged up and then all of a sudden a big burst of paint comes through because the air's, you know, blown a hole through there and shot this paint all over the place. So that can get really frustrating. So just really make sure you take your time, make sure that your airbrush is clean, because I learned that the hard way the first time, especially after not cleaning it, you know, and setting it down for, you know, a couple of months. I've learned to appreciate a good cleaning on an airbrush. Again, I'm going in now and just making sure that all the recessed areas, the gums, the nostrils, under the eyelids. I mean, especially like in the areas that the flesh has been torn, the gashes and stuff. I like to darken those up to give them that decayed look. And there you can see broken up random patterns. Makes it much more natural looking. One of the things too that you can do is, if you're finding that there's certain areas that are not getting hit, you can actually take the color that you have in there right now and actually do a light misting of the overall piece to kind of tie everything in together. I think I was finding that a portion of the chin and right above that right eye there is a little lighter than what I would have liked. So I think I just go back and do a light mist to kind of tie everything all together. And I'm going around the nostrils there now just to make sure that it has just that nice decayed look. Defining some patterns. So I think this is going to pretty much wrap up this first installment of painting this Bullseye bust. I will be working on part 2 hopefully this weekend, and I will post the second video coming here real soon. Hope you've enjoyed this. Hope it's been some help to you. Any questions, comments, don't hesitate to shoot me an email, and I'll see you guys in the next video.
Please hang up and try again.